Hello there and welcome to today's tutorial, how to waterproof containers within Flower Class. Of course, I'm your host and tutor Joseph Massey, and it's such a pleasure to have you with me here today as we dive on in to today's tutorial. Now, of course, if you've ever wondered the aisles of a wholesaler, looking at all the different containers, all the different pots, you often ask yourself the same question. Is it waterproof, but will it hold water? Can I arrange in it? Or will I be let down by a little trickle of seeping water, which of course ends in a nightmare for you when you're creating your designs? So in today's tutorial, we're going to be diving on into how to waterproof your own containers using a simple sealant. Are you ready? Should we dive on in? Now, for today's project, we really only need a handful of things. You're going to require a container, of course, that you want to waterproof, a craft brush, and a multi-purpose sealant, which you'll be able to purchase at your local hardware store or online. Now, here today, I'm using Leak Seal, which is a popular brand here in the UK, but the most important thing is that it's obviously a waterproof sealant, but it can be used on several different materials: wood, clay, resin. It says on the tin all of the different materials that you can use this sealant on. So do make sure that you're picking a multi-purpose sealant that you can use on a variety of different containers, and make sure that the container that you obviously want to seal is listed on the tin as well, just so we have the very best results. It's super simple. All we want to do is literally take off the lid of the tin of sealant, and then using our craft brush, we want to get ready to actually apply the material. So first things first, we're going to clean off our container, make sure it has no dust in there or no materials in there. We want it nice and clean, and then simply taking the brush, we're going to dip that into the tin of sealant and then apply a thin layer across the base of the container. Then, by applying more sealant, I want you to go around the sides of the interior of the container as well. Now, what we're after is an even spread of the sealant all the way around, across the base, across the sides, and most importantly, we don't really want to apply too much sealant. As a general rule, depending of course on the sealant that you buy, sealant can take anything from 2 to 3 to 4 days to actually dry. I mean, I have worked with some sealants before that say they take up to 5 days to fully dry. So what we want to do is not apply too much sealant to it. It's better to do a light covering, of course a thorough coating, but a light covering using the sealant. Let that dry off, and then if it still doesn't feel 100% watertight, you can then apply another layer atop of the first layer that you've used, adding a second layer essentially of sealant to the container. Once finished, of course, just pop the brush back, and then you want to place your bowl or your container in a location where it can dry really easily. The best types of locations for this are obviously warm, dry locations, ideally where there's no debris, not a lot of dust or other particles that could actually embed in the sealant itself. Now you've seen me do a wooden bowl, let's move on to a little resin pot that I have here that when I actually bought I didn't think was waterproof, but it turned out it isn't. So I'm going to be using the Leak Seal here again today and simply repeating the same process we just talked about, putting a layer at the very bottom of the vessel and then applying further elements or further layers of the Leak Seal around the sides of the container. Now, the great thing that we want to do, or bear in mind when we're actually sealing and waterproofing our containers, is that there is a drying process involved. As mentioned, sometimes this can take as little as a day or two. Of course, it depends a little bit on the environment that you're in, the location, the temperature, and all the rest of it as well. As a general rule, you'll find that the warmer the environment, the drier the environment, the quicker that your vessels and containers will dry out, will cure properly. But that's not a golden rule. The chemicals do take some time, naturally, to dry out and to do their thing. So always follow the directions on the container as to how to use it best. Also, when you're reading the instructions actually on the container for the tin itself, do bear in mind that some sealants can smell especially strong, so it is best to work in a well ventilated environment, just to make sure you're following good health and safety protocols, making sure the windows are open, you've got a nice good space to be working in so that the fumes don't become overpowering in any way. Last but not least, we're going to be using a little concrete pot for our final demonstration as to how to waterproof your containers. Essentially, the technique remains the same. We're going to begin by applying the sealant to the very bottom of the interior of our container, before then applying it all around the sides in a nice thin comprehensive layer. Once finished, we can then place our containers off to one side to dry for several days, following all the directions that are upon the instructions of the tin of the sealant. It's a really, really simple little technique, and it can often mean that you can start to look at, different vessels that may not be waterproof in a whole new light, knowing that you know how to waterproof them and therefore can use them in your designs. Now, the technique remains the same across every container that we've used here today, across the wooden bowl, the resin urn, and the concrete pot. The technique is the same across any vessel that you wish to waterproof. Thank you so very much for joining me today within Flower Class for this short and sweet tutorial on how to waterproof containers. If you've got any questions, drop them below, or of course you can catch me in our community or on a live call and we can chat further there. As ever, thank you so very much for joining me today within Flower Class, and I look forward to seeing you on the next tutorial very soon. Until then, have a good one.